Question 5. Honourable Member Mrs Lord-Brennan.
Thank you, Mr President. I'd like to ask the Minister for the Environment, Food and Agriculture what plans he has to ensure the island's fishing waters are protected after the 1st of January 2021.
Call the Minister, Mr Butt, to reply.
Thank you, Mr President. Building on the information sent from the Chief Minister on the 6th of November in response to Mr Robert Shaw's question in November Tynwald, I can advise that fisheries enforcement will continue in the normal way after the 1st of January 2021 through a combination of seagoing and shore-based patrols and inspections in conjunction with scrutiny of compliance with administrative requirements. Following the extension of the Isle of Man Territorial Sea in 1991, the Department commissioned a vessel that would achieve its fisheries enforcement responsibilities within the Irish Sea. The Barul was delivered in January 2000 and remains the Department's primary asset for fisheries protection and enforcement of the regulations within the Territorial Sea. There's been a lot of discussion around what new threats might emerge at the end of the implementation period following the UK's exit from the EU, and the enforcement team have been in regular dialogue with counterparts in the UK and other Crown dependencies. Various enforcement scenarios were considered as part of Operation Yellowhammer when identifying possible circumstances arising from a no-deal outcome towards the end of 2019, and this continues through officers' attendance at meetings of the UK Maritime Security Transition Board, where potential maritime security threats, including fisheries considerations, are modelled and simulated through tabletop exercises. As part of normal operations, satellite-based surveillance technology is used to provide spatial and temporal data for British and EU vessels over 12 metres and can be used to provide advance warning in relation to vessels in or around Manx waters. This will be closely monitored around the year end to assess risk and determine the most appropriate response. Officers will continue to liaise with counterparts in the UK and be prepared to act upon the latest intelligence. The Barul will be available for patrol on the 1st of January 2021 if required, and in the following days and weeks as appropriate.
Supplementary, Mrs Lord-Brennan.
Thank you, Mr President. If a fishing vessel intruding and fishing without licence has a speed faster than that which the Barul can achieve, what other defences are there?
Minister Butt.
Thank you, Mr President. The Barul is a fairly slow vessel, but we don't rely entirely on the Barul. Obviously, satellite surveillance and vessel monitoring will determine the identity of that vessel, and we may not be able to apprehend it in our waters, but I would anticipate that most vessels will stick to the law, and if it is indicated that they should be boarded, they will do so. But if they don't, we have the vessel's identification, and it can be tracked back to a home port, appropriate action taken through the legal process as appropriate when that vessel has docked and is identified.
Supplementary, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr President. And the Minister there referred in his answer to counterparts in the UK. Could I ask if the Minister's or his officers have been involved in any discussions with the Royal Navy, who I believe do have the powers to enforce Manx fisheries laws in Manx waters?
Minister to reply.
In terms, thank you, Mr President, in terms of enforcement in Manx waters, warranted Manx officers have to carry out that function. What has happened in the past when we've cooperated with other jurisdictions is that we've had a warranted officer on that vessel to carry out the necessary requirements in terms of arrest or charge or caution or whatever.
Supplementary, Mr Quine.
Thank you, Mr President. Mr President, I'm sure the Minister is aware of HMS Eaglet, situated at the Royal Navy Regional Headquarters for North West England and the Isle of Man, which is located at East Brunswick Dock, Liverpool, and which is currently there are based 2 Archer-class patrol vessels, HMS Charger and HMS Biter. I'm sure the Minister is also aware of the introduction into service of the second batch of the River-class offshore patrol vessels, the next generation in offshore patrol vessels to be operated by the Royal Navy, the latest of which, HMS Trent, was commissioned into the fleet in August of this year. In view of such, and further to what the Minister has just said, can he state as to whether a formal approach has been made to the Ministry of Defence, and if not, whether a formal approach is to be made to the Ministry of Defence to ascertain if one of the River-class offshore patrol vessels will be either based or seconded to HMS Eaglet to augment the two vessels already based there so as to assist in the protection of UK and Manx territorial waters within the Irish Sea area. Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. My department is obviously in touch and constantly with UK authorities and coordinating effort. A bit of a confusion there between what I call military intervention and fisheries enforcement. They are two different things, and we ought to be careful not to confuse the two. I mean, the department has built up excellent working relationships with other jurisdictions, and we have on occasions collaborated when investigating offences. However, on day one, each jurisdiction will be monitoring their own waters, and it is unlikely, therefore, that Royal Navy assets will be available for deployment in or around Manx waters for fisheries enforcement matters. The UK considers there is significantly higher risk of illegal activity by foreign fishing vessels in the North Sea, southwestern approaches, and in particular the English Channel, and intends therefore to focus its enforcement efforts on these areas. Should circumstances change and maybe get out of hand, it will be possible, I believe, to escalate the matter through the UK Maritime Security Transition Board.
Supplementary, Mrs. Lord-Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Some further questions to do with the crew available to resource this enforcement. Can the Minister advise what arrangements he has made to ensure that officers are warranted to board foreign ships fishing in our waters? And given the previous answer from the Chief Minister on this subject, have crew levels of the Barul been increased, or do they remain inadequate? Thank you, Mr. President.
Minister to reply.
Thank you, Mr. President. We believe that we have sufficient warranted officers available for the tasks required at present, and as far as I'm aware, the crewing of the Barul is at an optimum level, and they have indicated that they are available and will be available they are available now, but from the 1st of January as required. There's no crewing deficit there that I am aware of that would impede the vessel putting to sea and carrying out its functions.
Miss August Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm wondering if the Minister might be able to elaborate a little on a question that was put to Michael Gove from Lord Kenoull, who's the chair of the Lords EU Select Committee. He asked about the UK government's intention to establish a committee with the Crown dependencies to discuss implementation of international obligations, including in relation to fisheries. Thank you, Mr. President.
Minister to reply.
We have an ongoing and constant dialogue with the UK. At present, we obviously don't know the outcome of the transition arrangements and whether there will be a deal or no deal. All I can say is that those discussions will continue after the 1st of January, I'm sure, as the situation changes and evolves.
Supplementary, Mr. Henderson.
Good while, Lectern. Could the Chevalier confirm for me, in the light of the fierce questioning he's facing over the Barul this morning, that one, the Barul is a slow vessel, but that's because of our spec that we required a robust all-weather vessel, and that should the need arise, it will launch its secret weapon from the stern of the ship, which is an extremely fast, rigid inflatable boat that can carry warranted crew, and those crew can chase after and chase down most fishing vessels that are illegally fishing within our waters and have demonstrated an extreme aptitude in doing so over the past few years, and all credit to the crew. And secondly, would he also confirm, just to avoid confusion, that all of the crew, certainly most of them, are warranted officers to chase down, as I say, in the RIB, board other fishing vessels should they suspect illegal fishing. They can apprehend the catch, they can apprehend the tackle, and indeed in their more efficient role they can actually bring the skipper and crew to court in 24 hours here to the local courthouse and fine them if they are at default.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with what the Honourable Councillor Mr Hennis is saying. We have sufficient warranted officers, and whilst the Barrule is a slow all-weather vessel, and that was the spec when it was commissioned rather than a fast vessel, we do have the RIB. In my experience, we have not lost any enforcement because of the vessel being slow or people refusing to be boarded or being or ordered to return to a Manx port when in Manx territorial waters. And you are correct, enforcement in terms of bringing people to court has been fairly rapid, and I think we have a good reputation for that, and I think that is seen as something that is a useful tool for us. I would reiterate that if a vessel did try to leave our territorial sea and was unable to be apprehended, it would be committing a number of offences, and vessels nowadays are visible on satellite vessel monitoring systems, and we know where they're going. So there is no escape as such. It's not like flying low in an aircraft. They will go somewhere and we will be able to contact. And we have in the past served proceedings on people that are not Manx-based, and they have appeared in our courts in due course and been fined and imprisoned indeed.
Two more questions, then we move on. Mr Robert Shaw.
Thank you, Mr President. I think examination, Mr President, of the Honourable Minister's answer so far will show a certain degree of opaqueness, but given that, and certainly confusion and contradiction between answers today and previously, but given that our boats slow and can't catch faster fishing vessels, and given that the satellites can't actually capture the fishing boats either, he seems to be relying, in the event of a no-deal Brexit, on legal actions in, presumably, for example, French courts. But in the light of President Macron's recent statements about the conduct of French fishermen in the event of a no-deal Brexit, is he honestly confident that legal action will be possible through French courts? Could he explain that?
Reply, sir.
Thank you. There may be an element of what I would call antisocial behaviour by fishermen, and I think that's been evidenced in the Channel over the last few years, and disputes over scallop fishing grounds where French vessels have acted in an antisocial way, and the British vessels have not been committing fisheries offences. So we need to separate fisheries offences from antisocial behaviour. My department will work with other parts of the enforcement process, the constabulary or customs, if there are or there is evidence of antisocial behaviour. But when it comes to fisheries infringements or committing fisheries offences, we have quite a good track record in summoning people from other jurisdictions, interviewing them under caution and getting them to come back to the Isle of Man.
Post 1st of January.
We would not be relying on a French court as far as I am aware. They will have committed an offence in our territorial sea. But I can't confirm that 100%, and I will come back to the Honourable Member with a more substance-filled reply.
Mrs Lord-Brennan.
Thank you, Mr President. Does the Minister agree that enforcement is vital to the protection of the industry and also Manx fishing waters? And will he confirm or advise how many warranted officers there are available, and indeed how many people are available to resource this protection in respect of the Barrule, including covering shifts, because my understanding is that it would actually need to be quite a number to keep a track on this. Thank you, Mr President.
Minister Burt.
Thank you, Mr President. First of all, I can but only agree that enforcement is a very essential tool in looking after our fisheries and protecting them. And I think we have a fairly good record in that, and it is evidenced in the number of people that have been apprehended, and not just visiting vessels, but sadly some Manx-based vessels, and we will continue with a robust enforcement regime regardless of what happens after transition on the 1st of January. I can't confirm the number of warranted officers, but I will get that information to the Honourable Member as soon as